I always lose. I'm just way too slow. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
With the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. And Kenny, it's been a couple of weeks, such a busy week last week, and you had to do some traveling. I had to do some traveling, and so, but we're back, ready to rock and roll. So much to talk about as the NBA playoffs wrapped up. Let's start in the NBA, and I gotta say, man, the Miami Heat are really on fire. Were you surprised that they took care of the Sixers in such orderly fashion as they did? I know it went 6 games, but it really almost felt like a sweep. It seems like, Philly got their act together for a couple of games, and then I want to ask you a little bit more about where Philly goes from here. But were you surprised at that series?
Yes and no. I picked Philly if I remember right, but I think really when Embiid went down is kind of when the ship kind of fell.
Yeah.
Which kind of shows that he should have been the MVP, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
But I think that I think the thing that was most surprising for me was looking at the play of James Harden. Because it seems like he's gotten old very quick.
Yeah.
The guy took 2 shots in the second half in the last couple games. I don't know what happened to him. But also, a lot of people have been sleeping on the Heat this entire postseason.
Yeah.
The Heat are a good team, and they aren't that far removed from making it to the NBA Finals. I know the bubble was kind of weird, and there was a lot of odd stuff with it, but they did make the playoffs, or they did make the finals in the bubble. They have a great culture. They have an excellent coach. They also added a really good guy in Kyle Lowry, so I don't understand why.
Yeah.
But I think that they have a really good team. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up winning here.
Yeah, I'm with you. It is weird that they've best record in the East, and yet a lot of people still picked against them. And you're right, they have all the ingredients. And I want to get to Jimmy Butler in a second because he's just been amazing. But I want to go back to the Sixers. What do the Sixers do from here? Do you just think that they kind of stand pat and they just figure out through a preseason exhibition season, and Harden will work with the rest of this team, or do they now look to flip Harden and kind of restart again?
I think that they will keep Harden.
Yeah.
Daryl Morey loves James Harden.
That's true.
I think they should.
Yeah.
I think they really should restart. James Harden does also have a player option. Now he would be one of those people in the world to turn down $47 million or whatever he's owed.
Yep.
But I would not extend him long term. It looks like he's kind of gotten old quick. It seems like he's just not fully there anymore. He's not the player he was when he was winning an MVP in Houston. But also, I don't know who you would try to go out and get like a Dame Lillard. I don't know if you have the pieces to pull that off. I don't know. You need another point guard or someone like that, but
yeah. And they don't, they strike me. They don't have enough depth either. Going back to James Harden for a second, I hate to make this comparison, but I'll tell you who he reminds me of. He's only 32, but he reminds me in a way of Carmelo, because Carmelo didn't seem to always come back in great shape. Harden just at times looked out of shape for me when he showed up that last season for Houston, and then forced to trade obviously to Brooklyn, and I've defended him a little bit because I really liked how his game had changed, how he became more of a passer, which really wasn't. I mean, he used to never pass. He got the ball, he would shoot. But I loved how he became more of a playmaker, and he seemed like he was trying to do the same thing with Philly. But you were right that situation those last couple of games begs for him to just, you got to shoot now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to shoot, because I don't think Philly has that much depth. But I think if Harden dedicates himself, like you've seen Carmelo kind of have this, latter part of his career be very, very good coming off the bench, and he's probably in the best shape that we've ever seen him in the last few years, and he'll probably play at least one more year, I would guess, because he played really, really well last year for the Lakers. If Harden does that same thing now a little bit earlier here, I think he can still be a great player. And especially now that he has the playmaking skills and ability kind of in his repertoire. But Philly needs to add depth. I'm glad they brought back Doc Rivers. You and I have always felt like he's a really, really great coach, but unfortunately, people forget he's won a championship, but it's kind of the stigma of losing, coming from 3 games to 1, losing that a couple of times. Let me go to Boston, Milwaukee. Were you surprised at how that series wound up?
No, I called that one Boston in 7. I figured it'd be a pretty close series, and with Chris Middleton not there, that kind of tipped it more in Boston's favor. Jason Tatum had a really good couple games there. I think they sort of learned how to shut down Giannis a little bit. It does kind of leave that taste in your mouth of maybe Giannis kind of got on a hot streak, not necessarily that he's going to be the dominant player in the playoffs, but I guess we could kind of take it a couple of more years to kind of go from there. Because remember, there's been a few times where Giannis was kind of considered the overall overwhelming favorite and then didn't deliver. It was against Miami, against Boston too.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that's going to look like for him long term. I think obviously he's still on the trajectory of Hall of Fame player, guys won multiple MVPs, defensive player of the year. He's there. Is he going to go from shoe-in Hall of Famer to, well, maybe this guy is the best player ever? He still needs to take those couple of steps there.
Yeah, and there's the question I want to end this discussion with. I'll ask you now, and we can come back to it. Why is it so hard to repeat in almost any sport now? But the NBA really seems to be very, very difficult. I know we had the Warriors, and that seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. I think you made some great points about Giannis. I think without Middleton, he really didn't get the help. I mean, I just thought that 3 last year when they added Holiday really, really, really worked. And without Middleton this year, that was tough. And I just think, I mean, we got to give the Celtics a lot of credit. They are just, I know they lost last night. We'll get to that in a second, but they have just been so good this second half of the year. It's just been amazing. But they weren't that good last night. At least they were good for about 2.5 quarters. And Miami goes on this crazy run, and Jimmy Butler, talk a little bit about him. I mean, he's one of those guys, when you think about the top 5, 10 players in the NBA, his name doesn't normally come up in conversation, but this is a guy that does everything. He rebounds, he's got assists, and, he's a great defensive player, yet you don't hear his name come up. And maybe now this is his kind of, coming out here. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in these playoffs with Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. I think when you look at the players that are left, Jimmy Butler is probably the most well-rounded player. Where, I mean, he showed last night, he can drop 40 a night. I mean, he ended up with 49 and 5, along with 4 steals and 3 blocks.
Wow.
That's an insane line. So I think that a lot of people, like you said, he doesn't have the flair of, say, a Luka or a Steph Curry, or even this year with Jason Tatum. But he's a guy that works really hard. Everywhere he's gone, the team has gotten a little bit better, and then it's taken a step back when he left. Look at when he was with Minnesota, Chicago, even Philly. Like, remember Philly at that point when he was there was considered like the favorite, and
Yeah.
then the next year they really weren't.
Yeah.
So I do agree this could be like his moment, especially like the teams remaining. Boston, this Celtics group has never been to a finals. Dallas also has never been to a finals.
Yeah.
Golden State, it's been 3 years. So like the most recent experienced team is the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
So it could be very interesting to see if they take this opportunity. I mean, Eric Spoelstra's been here 5 times. Like, he's an excellent head coach.
He is. Yeah. Yeah.
Kyle Lowry has also won a title. I know he's not necessarily like he's not having the humongous season that he's had, but is he even playing right now?
Yeah, he's hurt. They think he'll play in this series, but he's got a hamstring thing, and he tried to play through it most of his playoffs. I agree with you on Miami, but I would have thought that this, and it still might be, right? It was only one game, but I thought this would have been Jason Tatum's coming out party, because he's just also been just so good. We've got some guys in this playoffs. We'll get to Luka in a second, that have just been unbelievable, and Tatum has been too. But Boston can't go down 2-0 in this series. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Especially a team like Miami, like, they're going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I know losing 2 on the road isn't that big of a deal, but Miami can steal one at TD Garden. Looking at 3-1, you're in trouble.
Yeah, no doubt.
What's also, I'll point this out with these with these playoffs. These have been excellent playoffs, and LeBron, Kevin Durant have been mainstays in the playoffs for the last decade and change.
Yeah,
didn't even win a single playoff game between the two of them.
That's just amazing. It's really, really amazing. And now also you have arguably the next, biggest star on that totem pole with Giannis not playing now. So that's really amazing. It sounds like you're picking Miami to take this series to get to the final.
Yeah, I think yesterday I texted my friends, a couple Celtics fans, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna be different and go with Miami. I see everyone's picking Boston, so I'll be different and pick Miami at 7.
Yeah. All right. Well, and you and I think I'm gonna go with you on that. I just think Miami's the deeper team. I think the Celtics have accomplished a lot, but you and I are going to get slayed with our Boston ties and all of our friends that we have up there, and our buddy Dave Ruff, who will try to get back on maybe next week. Let's go out west real quick, and so I break down this Mavs Suns series. I mean, you had to be stunned, right? We were together Sunday night, and we looked at each other and we said, Dallas is killing them. I mean, I don't know if I'm more stunned by how much they won by in Game 7 on the road against a team that won 66 games this year and who had the best home record this year, who had, went to the finals last year, who's got a veteran core, great coach. Just the result on that Sunday, I think if Dallas had just won by 2 points or something like that, close game, back and forth, I wouldn't have been as surprised, because anybody, you get to a Game 7, anybody can take it. But for them to win by 30 some odd points was just, when you start to add up all the factors going against Dallas, and I'll add this one thing here that I said a long time ago, that the Nets should not have broken up that team that they had to get James Harden. You had guys like Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, who was an all-star out there in Cleveland. And then you had Spencer Dinwiddie, who has just been this consistent NBA player for several years now. He winds up on a really good team. He goes from Washington at the trade deadline, winds up on a really good team here in Dallas. And that was his moment to shine because we're talking about Luka, but he had a phenomenal last couple of games, Dinwiddie. And I believe they're bringing him off the bench, if I remember right. And he's just lighting it up. He's like the microwave, he's just, unbelievable. So give me your thoughts. I know you were stunned like I was, but maybe you weren't as much.
I was just as stunned as you are. Like most people, just us, both of us had called, and both of our teams went down on the same day.
Yeah.
But people had the Suns going or winning the finals, going to or winning the finals. And for them to go out in the second round to the Dallas Mavericks, who are a good team, not a great team, I think to me it's just very shocking. Yeah, like winning the last two games by a combined 60 plus points is absolutely stunning, especially for a team that they were down 2-0 in the finals last year and they came back and won 4 straight. And just like that, and they carried that momentum. No, they won the first 2 games and then they lost 4 straight.
Yeah.
But then they carried that momentum all year. They were easily the best team in the NBA. There was really no one there to touch them. I know Booker got hurt in the first round and they kind of just eked by New Orleans. And I guess maybe then we probably should have said there's a couple red flags here. But still, Game 7 at home, you have experience, you have an excellent head coach, you have all of these things going towards you. It's one thing to lose by 5. It's another thing to lose by 35.
Yeah.
Luka had outscored them by the half by himself. And I think just looking at that alone to me is just shocking. And it does make you wonder how the Suns move forward, because sometimes teams that are in that situation can go one of 2 ways. They can either be wow, we really we wet the bed on that one. Let's shake it off and move on. Or do they say, oh, well, I guess I don't know if we could ever recover from that.
Yeah.
And I see a lot with the whole Chris Paul. And someone had asked the question, why do people feel bad for Chris Paul? Well, when you look at it, Chris Paul should have already had a ring if he had actually gone to the Lakers. He really should have.
Yeah. When the commissioner blocked that trade years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, obviously, he should have went there. It's hard, man. I want to talk about the Warriors real quick because they did win, 3 championships in 5 years. And that road is so hard. And even in the years that they lost, they got to the finals. So getting to the finals 5 straight times, LeBron through a couple of different teams got to the finals, what was it, 8 or 9 straight times? It's such a hard road because the grind it's so long, the NBA playoffs, and so are the NHL playoffs as well. But let's go to the Warriors for a second. I mean, here you got Klay Thompson coming back, and it looks and feels like 3, 4, 5 years ago with this team. They've got some really good young players as well. Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay. They're still the core there together. But now you're playing this Dallas team who's got to have all the confidence in the world. What's your take on now these Western Conference Finals?
I don't know. For this one, I've kind of gone back and forth. Part of me thinks Golden State can easily do it because they've been there. They've kind of been in this seat. They know how to win. Steph Curry still has a lot in him. Thompson still has a lot in him, as he showed in their closeout game. So I don't know. Also, to me, what'll be a big indicator will be how does Luka look the first couple games? Because I could see Klay Thompson locking him up because Klay Thompson is a really good defender.
Yeah.
I can also see Draymond Green locking him up too. But I think what might happen in this series that didn't happen against Phoenix is, should Dallas really give them an excellent game, Golden State's not going to be shooken up by it.
Yeah.
It seemed like once Lucas started going off, Phoenix was like, what in the world do we do?
Yeah.
And I guess maybe you kind of saw that in the finals last year with Giannis and that iconic block that he had. Like, they don't really know how to recover.
The turning point. Exactly. Yeah. 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 It's good. This is going to be fun, I think. I got to go with the Warriors. I just think that they, now there's a path. They don't have to go through Phoenix, to get to the finals. But sometimes, I wouldn't be surprised now. I was shocked that Dallas won, especially the way they did and on the road. I wouldn't be that surprised if they knocked off the Warriors here, but I just think that the Warriors have the championship pedigree. You talked about Spoelstra. I mean, you look at Steve Kerr and, what he's been through with that team. So it's going to be fun. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to repeat?
I think there's a few things. And I am going to go with Dallas. I figured I'll go, I'm going to be the different guy.
Okay. All right.
I'll probably, if I'm wrong on both of them, I'm not even going to say anything. It is what it is. I think what makes it so hard in the NBA is, like you said, it's a huge grind. Like, if you're going 7 games each time, we're talking 28 games. Like, that's like adding like a quarter of the season to your schedule. And then there's, especially if you're playing like teams that are far apart, there's the whole travel in there. Like, take like Boston, Miami. That's not a quick flight. Dallas Golden State isn't like, it's not like you're there in an hour. So
yeah.
I think that's part of it, is it is like a huge grind. I think there's a lot that has to go in with that. But then also, I feel like when you have that long postseason run, like you see it in baseball a lot more, but then like the next year, so exhausted, it takes you a little bit of time to kind of recover. And even when you get to that point where you're at the end of the year, you just look gassed. Like, I think of 2 guys that the reason why they never made the finals is because they worked so hard in the regular season so that by the time they got to the playoffs, they were hurt or exhausted. 2 guys that come to mind, Russell Westbrook and James Harden.
Yeah.
And I think like that's part of it. Also, especially, we're not talking like 5 years ago when you had all these teams that were very stacked. And then anytime there was like an old veteran that wanted to come off the bench, they would go to that team. I'm talking Cavs, Warriors. We had them for 4 straight years. I feel like there's still a lot of parity in the NBA nowadays. Because even look, like Boston, Miami, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, all very good teams. And we wouldn't be surprised at all if any of those 4 teams made the playoffs or made the finals next year.
Yeah.
You look at the West with Dallas and with Golden State and with Phoenix. Throw in the Lakers in there if they can get their act together. Like, there's a lot of really good teams, but there's not like that elite super team where it's like, well, they're unbeatable. I feel like everyone's pretty beatable, and you get the wrong matchup, boom, you're gone.
Yeah. It's a great point. And, I love the point you were making about you get sometimes those veteran players that come off the bench and help so much. Iguodala and Leandro Barbosa come to mind with Golden State. And I mean, they were so important. I think Iguodala actually won MVP in one of those series. They were so important to their run. And the Cavs would always try to pick up guys, but they would be a little bit past their prime, Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So you're thinking so Dallas, Miami, okay. I think the NBA TV people, ESPN and ABC, would love to see Boston, Golden State. That would be the coast to coast, and 2 kind of classic teams. I think that's the one that they'll see. But I would not be surprised with Boston if it's Miami, Dallas. So I'm picking Miami. I'm going Miami, Golden State. So we'll see. All All right, good stuff, man. Let's. So I got to do this one retraction. A few weeks ago, I said the Islanders made the playoffs, and I might have jinxed. And so I was wrong in that, but I might have jinxed because then a couple of days later they fired their coach, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, but I had to look that back up, right? He was there for 4 years. That franchise was going nowhere, and they lost their best player, and they went to the conference finals 2 straight years. Now they didn't get to the finals, but I'm just like, there had to be something else going on, and I don't know enough about hockey to dig into him, but I know that he's a guy who won a championship in other places, right? But also, I also know Lou Lamoriello for a long time here with the Devils and did a phenomenal job. But even when the Devils were winning, he was firing coaches. So I was surprised that the coach got fired a couple of days ago. But I apologize for that. I said the Islanders were in the playoffs, starting their run, but they hadn't made the playoffs. But the Rangers went on to the next round in spectacular fashion. And so maybe we'll talk a little hockey next week as the Rangers now start a little bit of an exciting run here. And the reason why I'll probably want to talk about them a little bit more, and we'll get right to baseball here, but they're an example of a team I felt did it right because they tore it down, man. They rebuilt a few years ago, and they've got a bunch of really young players that they brought in and brought up, and they added a piece here and there, one or two veterans, but they really turned it around. And they asked their fans. I remember them sending out a memo. You might remember this, to their fans saying, "Hey, second half of the year is not going to be that great." I'm paraphrasing, because we're looking to get younger, and we're probably going to be trading a lot of our players. They gave all their fan base a heads up because the Rangers, they sell that place out every night with a lot of season ticket holders, and the organization was at least very straight up with them, which is a little surprising. The Knicks should kind of do the same. But all right, let's jump to baseball real quick. The Reds pitched a no-hitter and lost. I'm sorry, we're on the positive tip, but that's hard to do. I think how many times has that only happened? Like 6 or 7 times in the history of baseball?
Yeah, I looked it up 6 times. Hasn't happened since 2008.
Wow. All right. Enough said. The Reds are having a tough year. Enough said about that. Because there's a lot to talk about with your Yankees. They remain blistering hot. Best team in baseball. Let me give you some space here. What are some things? What is this clicking for the Yankees? They've become the Bombers again. I thought I saw that Aaron Judge homered 13 and 14 last night. He had 2 more home runs last night. What is it? What's clicking for this Yankee team?
I think it still starts with their starting pitching.
Yeah.
Overall, their team ERA is 2.76.
Oh my gosh.
Which is the best in baseball. And I really look at their their starting pitching really continues to set the tone. I want to see if I can pull it up. I believe their worst starting pitcher is Luis Severino. Still has an ERA of under 4. Oh, it's not on here. Also, Nestor
Cortez. Really good game the other day. Severino, did I see that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he went 6, I believe, yesterday or day before, something like that.
Yeah.
Also, Nestor Cortez. He now leads the majors in ERA. That's something you wouldn't have said 2 months ago.
No, he's been great. He's just been great.
But I look at it, and to me, one of the biggest things is, yes, their starting pitching has been great. Their bullpen has been pretty good. But it seems like the Yankees are hitting better in the clutch. Like, it seemed like last year, every time you had runners in scoring position, it was like, well, how are they going to blow this one? It seems like they're hitting better in, like, the situational aspect of hitting. They are hitting home runs. Judge leads the majors with 14. Stanton, I believe, I'm pulling this up now. Yes, Stanton has 10. It's one of those historical things. They have 3 guys because Rizzo also hit his 10th. They have 3 guys that have 10 or more home runs this short in the season. Um, they're hitting home runs where it matters. But also something that I've kind of noticed recently is they have a lead, they continue to kind of tack on runs here and there. So like they'll get a 2-1 lead, but then they'll hit a random home run. Josh Donaldson, who seems to kind of be turning it around, will hit a double. Gleyber Torres will add a run here and there. So I feel like they're not only are they like hitting in the clutch, but they continue to tack on those extra runs just in case something happens, which also takes a lot of pressure off the bullpen. So if someone gives up a home run, if someone gives up a double, it's not backbreaking the way that it could be. Also, like a lot of people will say they're playing an easy schedule, which like the schedule hasn't been that challenging. But also, I mean, they did just take 2 out of 3 from the White Sox, who are considered like one of, if not the best team in the AL Central.
Yeah.
They took 2 out of 3 from Toronto. They're beating good teams in this. They also have 9-4 record against teams over 500. Them and the Astros, who are 9-7, have a winning record against teams that are above 500.
Yeah.
Or is that so? I think that's at least in the American League.
Man, oh man, they're one of the things that you mentioned the home runs a lot, but it was like feast or famine for them over the last several years. I mean, hitting a lot of home runs really hasn't been that new. It's just that they seem to be hitting them in the right spots now. They seem to be doing a lot of the other things. You had mentioned this a lot, especially last year, that you were frustrated by how they ran the bases and how they didn't have any speed, and they just didn't play fundamentally well. And that seems to be not the case this year. They seem to be doing, things right and setting themselves up so that 3-run homer, in the 7th inning really, really matters, as opposed to just hitting a bunch of home runs when they're down, they're down 8-0, and they hit 4 more home runs to make it 8-4, which seems to be the case with them for the last couple of years. And I'm really, really impressed by the way Aaron Boone has this team going. And I want to give him a lot of credit because, the New York media has killed him the last few years, and they seem to be giving him, some really good credit here. I always thought that he tried really hard, that, I've said it here, right, a few times, that I felt at times he overmanaged, a little bit, but he seems to just have this team in the right direction,
Yeah. Also, it kind of seems like they, you had mentioned the stolen bases. I have to look it up, but this year they're 7th or 8th in all of baseball with stolen bases. I'm pretty sure they were dead last year.
Yeah.
Because even guys like, it's like Kiner Falefa has speed.
Yeah.
Tim LeCastro, who's hurt, has a lot of speed. Tim LeCastro, I think, is actually the fastest player in baseball, if I'm not mistaken. But guys also that they've gotten, like Rizzo and Donaldson, are smart base runners. Where last year, like Gary Sanchez would like hit a double, jog around the bases, and then be out by like half a mile. Gio Urshela is not exactly the fastest of guys. I know both of them are having decent years, but it kind of seems like they've kind of hit a good stride in not just having right-handed power hitters, but they have like kind of a little bit more of a complete team. Also catching. Their catching, hitting-wise, has been awful. But I think because they've really focused on the defensive aspects of catching, I think that's why the pitching has been so good.
Yeah.
Where they're doing a lot of good pitch framing. They're throwing guys out. Gary Sanchez isn't leading the league in pass balls because he's not behind the plate 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's coming together. It's a long season, right? It's hard to stay this hot all year long, but they're putting some distance between them and the East. And, you've got some really good teams, obviously, in the East. We won't talk about the Red Sox, who, you can't fall this far behind and play catch up. Baseball is probably easier than other sports to make up ground. because you know baseball you can peel off 8, 9 games in a row, you know, win a couple of series here, but you also when you fall far behind, you're depending also on the other team to start losing, and that starts to become difficult. I want to get into Matt Harvey with you. I'll do a brief thing on the Mets. There, you know, we've hit a little bit of a wall. We've got some injuries. Tyler McGill, I knew something was wrong with him the other night. You know, when he was only throwing like in the low 90s, where that you know on opening day he was like going 99 and 98. So hopefully he's back sooner rather than later. Hopefully DeGrom, the news was good on him. But the Mets are 6-6 in their last 12, and that's okay. I think Buck will keep them above water. They could have won that doubleheader yesterday. You know, a break or two here, and they got a break where they had strike three, and their catcher missed the ball, and you know, Escobar got to first base, and then there's a base hit right after to bring in the tying run last night. So, you know, then they gave up the go-ahead run at the top of the ninth. But anyway, I'll take where they're at. I really have no problem with it. This feels different from last year. Last year, even when they were winning, there was just something missing from this team. But I'm feeling like this team will be fine. I want to talk about Matt Harvey. So if we go back, you know, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, Matt Harvey was, we used to say Happy Harvey Day, and he was Batman. And, you know, we couldn't wait for him to pitch, especially when here at home. The fans were so into, you know, him pitching, and he just had such great stuff. But there was some cracks that you saw back then that maybe he didn't apply himself. You know, he seemed to, you know, not get along great with his teammates. Terry Collins seemed like he couldn't reel him in. There were some things that you saw, but because he was so good, you kind of overlooked it. You know, you would always see him, you know, paparazzi always catch him out late at night, and he was dating models. Or not saying that, you know, there's anything wrong with that. He was single and everything like that, but this was really, really serious. You know, the Mets finally cut ties with him. He obviously had some injuries, so that's not his fault. But the Mets cut ties with him. I think he worked hard to come back. And, you know, he comes back, and it's been up and down, right? He's with the Angels, the Royals. He's bounced around the Orioles now. And, you know, he's had a few games where he's had some success, but for the most part, he's nowhere near his starting the All-Star game, you know, and then pitching, you know, 8 great innings in Game 5 of the World Series in 2015, you know. And so he gets suspended for 60 games because he has to admit under oath that he supplied, you know, drugs to this kid that died of an overdose. And so I tried to think of who has taken a longer fall than Matt Harvey, and it's hard for me to come up with somebody. I'm sure if I thought hard enough I could, but I know you've got a couple of interesting takes on him. I mean, there's part of me that feels really, really bad for him. The pastor and Christian in me wants to see a comeback here, and hopefully he makes one. And but more importantly in life than in baseball, if he comes back in baseball, great. But if he just has a rest of a great life, and maybe he can talk to people about, you know, some of the drug abuse that he personally had to admit to, you know, under oath. And so, anyway, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. I know you had a couple of other different takes as well. So what was your thoughts as you saw all this, saw it unfold maybe a couple of months ago when he was on trial and he had to admit all this, and you kind of knew something was coming, but as you saw it kind of unfold and come to an end in the last couple of days, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, like you had said, like when first taking trial, it was like, whoa, that is a huge bomb to drop right there. It also kind of does like, yeah, the pastor in me, my heart breaks for him because like this was a guy that could have had it all. This was a guy that like looked like he was on a fast track to the Hall of Fame. Remember the debate on whether him and Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard was the best pitcher on that staff.
Yeah.
And obviously we know who ended up rising to the top there, but it is really like it shows what can happen when you don't have a good sense of accountability around you.
Mm,
Um,
great point. Yeah.
because it seems like a lot of the people that he was around weren't necessarily great people. And like, yes, I would say you should have a group of Christians around you, but if someone's not a Christian, that's kind of an unrealistic expectation. But you shouldn't have people that are pulling you down because the Bible talks about this that you have to watch who your friends are because eventually you'll be like them. And it seems like Matt Harvey did not have the best group of friends around him. Especially like you're talking, you are one of the biggest celebrities in the biggest city in the world. Like we're talking Matt Harvey 2013, 2014. There wasn't anyone that's like a bigger athlete. Like Derek Jeter was still there, but like he was at the end of his career. Mariano Rivera, same thing. Um, there wasn't like the Aaron Judge yet that was up. Like the Yankees were kind of in flux. The Mets had that guy, like you said, like when he pitched, it was like a big special day.
Yeah.
And then like he kind of lost it all. Obviously, like drug addiction is hard and it's a struggle. And I really do hope and pray that he does get better. But he is very fortunate, saying that you got suspended for this. He's very fortunate because first of all, like openly admitting that you dealing with illegal drugs, like I guess the only reason why he was able to take the stand was because he only agreed to have immunity. But like you could have gotten convicted right along with that guy that got decades in jail for Tyler Skagg's death.
Yeah.
But also, like in baseball, he's lucky that he's not facing a bigger suspension. I'm assuming based on their joint drug agreement and CBA stuff, it's probably the biggest suspension they could like actually give him, especially since it's kind of like retrospect type. But still, he's very, very lucky that he's not facing a 120, 300 game suspension. And in fact, Trevor Bauer was one to tweet about it like, hey, how did this guy who openly admitted to doing illegal drugs and I'm stuck with a 324 game suspension?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think part of that might be not necessarily like the length is on like what happened, but it's probably more based on like what can MLB actually do.
Yeah.
But still, you look like to what Trevor Bauer didn't kill anybody. Trevor Bauer's actions didn't lead to somebody's death. Matt Harvey's did. So obviously, he probably has a lot more like emotional baggage with that, but still, it's sad, and I do hope that he does bounce back. I know last year there was a time where he was like still going out there every day and having like an 11 ERA, but hopefully he can get his life together and we'll see like comeback player of the year 2023 Matt Harvey.
You never know. And I think that we love, America loves a comeback. And I know God loves comebacks, and God, can make that path for him. I don't know what his faith is or, maybe he's found it through this. I have no idea, but I know that that's a long way to fall, man. When you're, it seems like it's a long time ago. It's really not, 2012, 2013 when those guys came up. So it is 10 years ago, but, and I love that you made the comparison there. Jacob deGrom, obviously, is a guy, and Syndergaard has been great too. Syndergaard has just had injuries, but Syndergaard is not as good as deGrom. deGrom just really devoted himself to the art of pitching, and you sometimes see how that hard work really, really, really pays off. Trevor Bauer, I think, we got to continue to follow that. If I'm him, I'm not tweeting about it, but I would keep my mouth, shut. But he does make a point, and you make a point too. I'm not sure how Harvey got just 60 games, but again, it probably has to. I think with Bauer, they kind of made those rules up as they went. And I'm not saying that it's too long or too short. I haven't I haven't felt one way or another yet because obviously what he did, as you said a couple of weeks ago, even if it wasn't illegal, doesn't mean that it was the right thing, you know. So I'm not sure if I haven't really felt yet whether Bauer just sit out, keep quiet, you know. Certainly anybody deserves a second chance, you know. But Harvey, I think you're right. I think there's probably a you know some sort of I think that was within the rules of baseball, you know, the 60 games, and it seems like it should have probably been longer, but 60 games and you haven't made the major league team. That'll be so. As far as he fell, it'll be just as much of a climb back up to get back on a major league roster. I know he was in the Orioles, still in the Orioles organization, but he was in their, you know, extended spring training minor league camp. You know, he didn't even make the big league team to, you know, to come up. And I don't think the Orioles have totally cut ties yet. You know, you know, so anyway, you know, so let's pivot. Let's wrap up. Let me. I won't turn the music on yet because I want to talk about who are you rooting for this week, and I've got two, and then you can say yours, and we can wrap up. You know, I've got deep-seated roots from the '90s and the Knicks Miami Heat rivalry that year. So there's a big part of me that it's hard for me to root for the Heat. I know it's a different team, Alonzo Mourning, and you know when Pat Riley left the Knicks and went to Miami. It was just a perfect storm to just have this unbelievable rivalry. Both teams got really good at the same time, and they just battled it out every year. It seems like the Knicks won most of those, but they were nasty. Whether it was Charlie Ward in a full-scale brawl, and then all of the Knicks coming off the bench, and then all of them getting suspended. That was the only year Miami beat them, if I remember right. But I got to root for Jimmy Butler. I think he's a guy who epitomizes hard work, and he plays the game right. And I love what he's doing here in the playoffs. The other quick guy that I have to root for, and this is a sad one, Starling Marte. I did not realize that 2 years ago, almost to the day, his wife suddenly passed away of a massive heart attack. And his grandmother passed away either yesterday or the day before. And his mother passed away when he was only 9 years old, and his grandmother raised him. And his grandmother wasn't sick or anything like that. She also just suddenly, passed away. And so he's on bereavement leave from the Mets. And if you just think about if we knew someone in our personal lives, and you probably do, and I'm sure I do, who lost a spouse like that at such a young age, and then to lose their grandmother almost 2 years to the day, it's just devastating. And so I'm rooting for him to get through this, grieving process, and then be able to come back and just have a spectacular rest of the year, with the Mets. So rooting for both those guys.
I'll start with my Yankee guy first. Josh Donaldson. I think he's kind of started to turn it around a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if trying to mess with Tim Anderson is anything to do with that, but I'm rooting for him. He's kind of been the one guy that you're like, all right, so when's he getting going? It's hard to complain when your team is, 27-9? But he's kind of been the one, hey, so we paid a lot of money for you. We got rid of Gio Urshela for you. When are you getting going?
Yeah.
But it seems like he's starting to turn it around. So I'm going to be rooting for him this week.
Okay.
Okay. Also, I'm going to be rooting for Klay Thompson.
Good one.
I love his story. I love that after his ACL, even think about when he was in the finals and he tore his ACL and still tried to shoot 2 free throws.
Yeah.
And then he's coming back, tears his Achilles, but now he's back. Huge game to close out Memphis. I hope he has a great series. I would love to see the Warriors back. I feel like that'd be a really cool story because usually, you look at a lot of these dynasties, once they miss the finals, it's really hard to get back there. Think of the Lakers, back in the 2000s or even earlier. Like a lot of times when you miss the finals, like that's it. Having them get back, especially get back 3 years later, would be really cool to see.
Yeah. I love both of those. I forgot Thompson is a guy that you want to. He's another guy who, to me, over the years has played the game the right way. He really has, and he's a champion, no doubt about it. All right, the music is on. Take us home,
All right, this is Kenny Squared N
Kenny.
with sports on the positive tip. We will see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Enjoy the game.